Lena dropped her keys on the kitchen counter and stopped when she saw the empty fold of the second pillow and an unopened envelope on the table. A sharp suspicion lodged in Lena's chest. The notice of the cold pillow and that single envelope made a claim she had been dodging. Something in their life had shifted, and it was not only exhaustion. She stood there with her coat half on, the smell of late night coffee on her fingers, and moved toward the envelope as if it might answer a question she had not yet learned to ask. Lena peeled the flap free with a finger and found nothing more than a card from Ethan's employer and a handwritten list of items for the weekend. That small, ordinary content did not ease the suspicion. It made the silence around the card louder. She slid the card back into the envelope and held it between both palms, testing whether the edges would tell her what the pillow would not. The apartment hummed. The clock over the stove read 2:10. The single lamp over the counter threw a soft pool of light. Beyond it, Ethan's jacket lay draped over the chair, a late night receipt sticking from its pocket like a question mark. Lena moved to the chair and smoothed the jacket with palms that were not steady. She found the receipt, an address, a motel name, a time stamp for midnight, folded and tucked into the inner seam. Her hands tightened. Suspicion shifted into something louder. Anger flared along her jaw. She set the receipt on the counter beside the envelope as if laying out evidence. Lena did not sit. She called Ethan on speaker and kept walking from the kitchen to the bedroom, breathing into her ribs to keep her voice even. "Ethan, are you awake?" she asked. There was a pause, then a soft, measured answer, "Yeah." "Lena, you okay?" Her voice narrowed. "Whose receipt is this?" "It's mine, Ethan, I can explain." Lena stopped by the bedroom doorway and touched the cold side of the bed, where he had slept for years. The mattress felt the same, but the air over it felt different. "Explain what, Ethan?" He hesitated. The answer came slow, clipped. "Practiced. I was working late. Meetings. I didn't mean for you to find it like this." The line ended then, before Lena could press further. She placed the envelope on the table and ran a thumb along its crease, watching for fingerprints. The suspicion had been the first motion. Her next motion was to look for proof. The morning after, Lena made breakfast as a way to gather herself. She arranged 2 plates, poured coffee, and left Ethan's untouched. When he came in, a flinch crossed his face at the sight of the receipt on the counter. Morning, like a greeting that belonged to another era. Lena slid the receipt across the counter toward him. "Ethan, this has a motel name on it." His jaw tightened. "It's—" He pinched the bridge of his nose and looked away. "I told you, Lena." Late work. She set her mug down with more force than necessary. Late work 3 nights in a row. Leaving at 1 a.m. Ethan's eyes met hers briefly. "Ivy had to go in Lena projects." "That doesn't mean what you're rethinking," she heard himself saying. "Then tell me what it means." Her voice sounded smaller against the clink of spoons in the sink. Ethan moved faster than usual then, gathering the plate and picking up his messenger bag. He moved through the apartment like someone avoiding a puddle. "I have a meeting in an hour. I'll talk tonight." "Okay." He placed the bag on his shoulder and left before Lena could answer. After he left, Lena paced the small living room until the doorman buzzed upstairs with a package, and then downstairs she bumped into Maya in the stairwell. Maya pressed a hand to the banister and looked at Lena with a face that knows too many building stories. "You look like you need coffee." "Maya." She had a beat-up tote under her arm and hair pulled into a messy knot. "Also, I've seen Ethan leaving late a few nights. He goes down the back way." "Thought you knew." Lena's hands went to the envelope again. "No one told me." Maya shrugged. "People talk." I didn't want to say anything if it wasn't mine to say. That morning became a series of small arrivals. A note at the front desk for a package. A voicemail from Claire asking if Lena was coming to dinner. Each small, ordinary thing stacked like a step to climb, and Lena climbed it with a tightened expression. Suspicion had pushed her into action. The next change in that emotion came when the evidence in Ethan's jacket shifted her aim from accusation to discovery. In the afternoon, Lena went through the closet because she could not hold herself away. She pulled out shirts and his sweaters, folding them by habit until her fingers brushed a folded receipt stuck in the seam of a jacket she had not worn in months. The receipt matched the one from the kitchen. Beneath it she found a small folded note in a handwriting she did not recognize. Her breath caught. Her hands trembled. The note had just 2 lines, a time and a name. No explanation, no salutation. She sat on the floor and spread the items in front of her like a map. The room felt too small. Her anger from the morning hardened into determination. She texted Claire, "Can you call now?" Claire answered in less than a minute, "Lena, what's wrong?" Claire's voice came bright and fast through the phone. Lena, the word receipt and the motel name, and then let the silence carry the rest. "I'm on my way, Claire." Her sister's walk sounded like shoes on stairs minutes later. When Claire arrived, she stood in the doorway and took in the spread of shirts and receipts on the floor, then sank down beside Lena. "Claire," Lena whispered. He left that notepad in his pocket. "I found it." Claire's hand went to Lena's shoulder. "Have you asked him?" Lena lifted the jacket like a shield. "I tried. He work." He left. Claire's brow knit. "We should talk to him together." They called Ethan. He answered with the same measured voice. "Lena, Claire, can we not?" He stopped. "I'll come home. I'll explain." When Ethan came back, he moved with a different pace than just that morning. He set his bag down at the door and avoided the pile on the floor the way someone avoids a minefield. Lena stood and held the jacket between her palms. "Ethan, whose handwriting is this?" He blinked. "You found my note." "I'm sorry, is that a motel?" "Claire." Her voice was light but contained a tightness that matched Lena's. Ethan inhaled and then let the air out slowly. He looked at Lena. "I should have told you." Lena's mouth opened to say something she had practiced. "Who is Sheet? Did you cheat?" But the words felt brittle in her throat. Instead she asked, "Why not?" Ethan sat on the couch, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and kept his voice low. "I didn't want to worry you. I thought I could handle it." For a moment the room filled with ordinary noises. The apartment heater sighing, a car passing outside, someone in the hallway humming. Lena's suspicion shifted again. Anger moved towards something else. Confusion braided with concern. She placed the receipt on the coffee table and sat opposite him. "Ethan, tell me now. Don't dodge." Lena named him directly. She needed specifics, not soft evasions. Ethan nodded. He stared at his hands. "I had late night appointments at the clinic." "I didn't want to say until I knew." Lena's ribs tightened. "What kind of appointments?" He measured his answer. "Follow-ups, tests." "I didn't want to make it bigger than it was." Claire leaned forward, voice quick. "Ethan, you left a motel receipt in your jacket." "That's not clinic paper." He flinched. "I know how it looks. I took a motel room to nap between late shifts. The clinic's hours are weird." "I didn't want you to worry." Claire's eyes held him. "Why would you hide appointments? Why would you sleep at a motel instead of telling Lena?" There was a beat of silence. Ethan looked at Lena full on for the first time. "I didn't want to change you. I didn't want to watch you watch me get smaller." Lena's heart stuttered. "Get smaller how?" He swallowed. "I had some tests. Some showed something that scares me. I thought if I kept it to myself I could decide what to do first. I didn't want to put that on you." The room contracted again. Lena felt something in her chest that was not exactly relief but not betrayal either. Her suspicion cooled into a steadier fear. You should have told me." Ethan's voice shifted shorter. "I know. I'm sorry." Lena stood and went to the bedroom to gather things that felt like proof of their life. A sweater, a shared mug, his old scarf. Handling objects steadied her. Each item held its own weight. When she returned, Claire had a coffee in her hands, watching Ethan with a look that asked for more than apologies. "Ethan? Claire? Did Patel call you about test results?" He nodded yes. "I thought I could manage the news." I didn't want Lena to feel like she had to fix it. "Fix what, Ethan?" Lena, her voice did not rise, but it pressed. She needed a name for what he had been carrying. Ethan stared at the floor. "They found a small mass. It's being investigated. I'm still waiting on one biopsy. I didn't tell you because I thought maybe it would go away." The room changed in the way rooms do when a new object takes up space. The word biopsy arrived like a white thing on a tabletop. Lena felt fear pool along her spine and then reshape into a careful focus. Suspicion shifted a third time, this time toward empathy threaded with frustration. She moved to him and set the mug in his hands without thinking. "Ethan," she said, naming him like an anchor, "why did you think you could handle it alone?" He looked at her. "I didn't want to watch you worry. I thought I'd protect our life by not laying this on top of it. I thought that would be easier." Claire's mouth tightened. "Protection by secrecy has a price, Ethan." He closed his eyes. "I know. I'm sorry I kept it from you both." The argument that had felt inevitable earlier softened into a different kind of friction. Now they were not accusing. They were rearranging a new reality. Lena's hands trembled when she reached for the envelope and the receipt again. She spread the papers on the table and read them aloud, voice steadying as she focused on facts and times. The act of speaking the dates made the situation workable in a way that fear had not. At one point, the conversation tightened into a quick exchange between Lena and Ethan where exhaustion and grief brushed raw against each other. They spoke in clipped lines, 3 beats of thoughts trading back and forth. "You left me out, Lena. I was trying to protect you," Ethan answered, "by lying." "Lena, by hiding it," Ethan corrected, "not by lying." "Ethan, you re not a child. Lena, we are partners." "Partners tell each other, I know," he replied. "I should have told you." "Then tell me now, Lena. My follow-up is tomorrow morning." "Ethan. Patel wants to see me." "I didn't want you to rearrange your life." Lena held that. She thought of the nights he had left, the receipt, the motel. She thought of how many small silences had proliferated into a separate life he had been carrying alone. Her anger had dwindled into something like sorrow and responsibility. Claire stood and moved to the window. She rubbed her hands together, the restless motion of someone who cannot sit with a problem without moving. "Lena, you need to decide what you want from him. Do you want him to keep hiding things? Or do you want him to let you into that part of his life?" The question felt enormous and direct. Lena looked at Ethan. He looked back with a quiet shame and a clear need. The argument dissolved into an agreement to attend the follow-up with him. Claire, she would drive them, and stayed to make plans for the morning. That external decision shifted the shape of the night. The suspicion that started the day had led to a plan and a small repair. Still, the next day brought its own tense moments. Patel's office smelled of alcohol wipes and Photopia toner. Ethan sat with his hands clasped, the poster on the wall about heart health safe and unrelated. Lena watched him from across the room, watching his shoulders rise and fall with each breath. She felt a rise and then a settle, a clear progression from dread to focused presence. The doctor came in with a stack of files and a careful face. He explained the biopsy process and the likely outcomes in plain terms. Ethan listened, lips pressed. Lena direct questions and kept them short. When the doctor used medical words, Lena noted them, but kept returning the conversation to what they would do together. The doctor's tone was clinical. Lena's questions were small and practical. Appointment times, medication possibilities, who would call next. When they left the clinic under a sun that had nothing to do with the room's fluorescent light, Lena felt the day's emotion change again. Fear had not gone. It had reorganized into planning. There was no dramatic reconciliation. Instead, there was a line of practical steps. They returned home and sat at the kitchen table with Claire in the next room on a call, finishing the details of a lab schedule. Lena wrote important dates in her journal, not as a ritual but as a map. That evening, after Claire left, they spoke in a low voice about what had happened. "Lena, Ethan, I don't forgive the hiding yet, but I will be here. If you let me." He looked at her, and his answer was small and honest. "I will tell you everything." Starting now, they spent the night replacing secrecy with named appointments and phone numbers scribbled on the back of a takeout menu. The motel receipt remained on the counter like a small relic of an older fear, but now it was a piece of information rather than proof of betrayal. The shift in Lena's emotion, suspicion, anger, confusion, then cautious compassion and determination moved the story from fracture toward care. But the chapter's sharpest moment came in the cafe across the street, that same evening when Lena, Claire, and Ethan sat with cold cups and a raw urgency in their voices. Claire pressed for the full account. "Ethan, tell us what the doctors said." "No more hiding." Ethan paused and then spoke the words he had avoided. "They found a mass. It's under investigation. The biopsy is tomorrow. I could have told you sooner. I didn't. I thought I could manage it alone." He touched Lena's hand briefly and then withdrew it as if afraid his touch would be too heavy. Claire's reply was simple and fierce. "You should have told Lena. She is the closest person to you." Ethan's voice cracked, small and human. "I know. I'm sorry." That reveal reframed the motel receipt, the late departures, the hidden notes. The reader now understood why Ethan had retreated. The twist, the discovery that his secrecy was not about another person but about a health scare, changed Lena's stance. Her anger gave way to a grief that had the shape of compassion, and then to practical resolve. Lena walked home alone. The apartment felt not empty but heavy with a new arrangement. She laid the unopened envelope on the table and opened it again, this time to place inside a small, folded note that read simply, "I'm here, we'll go together." She wrote it with a blue pen and slid it beneath the card. This was not a grand promise, it was a concrete plan. When Ethan arrived later, he found the note and the receipt on the counter. He read it slowly, then looked up at Lena, who stood by the stove with her hands folded around a mug. She walked to him and offered no speeches, only the action that had become their new language. "Presents, Ethan," she said, and her voice was steady. "Tomorrow we go together." He reached for her hand and held it without hesitation. "Okay, outside." Someone in the hallway banged a door. A taxi rolled by. Inside, Lena moved to the doorway with a small, personal thing in her palm, the thin gold locket she always wore when she wanted to feel steady. She stepped to Ethan's doorstep and left the locket there with a note she had not meant to give him earlier. It was a quiet gesture, but it was a decision shaped by everything that had happened. Discovery, confrontation, explanation, and a choice to stay close. Lena set the locket on the doormat, turned, and walked back across the threshold. She did not wait for Ethan to open the door. She stood with the doorway between them and held her posture like an invitation, not a demand. The chapter ends with a small, concrete beat. Lena placing the locket at Ethan's feet and stepping back into the apartment, watching him bend to pick it up and meet her eyes, ready to speak for the first time without pretense. Lena stepped out of the elevator and watched Ethan press a folded envelope into Oliver's hand without meeting her gaze. Suspicion lodged under her breastbone the way a splinter catches in skin, sharp and impossible to ignore. Oliver gave Ethan a quick, surprised smile and slipped the envelope into his jacket as if it were routine paper. Lena did not move. The lobby smelled of leather polish and cheap coffee. The action on the marble floor told her the conversation she had dodged at home had left a visible trace. She named the moment aloud even as she kept her feet planted. "Ethan," she called, voice steady enough to be heard but quiet compared with the hum of the lobby. Ethan's jaw tightened. He looked at her once, a shudder of hesitation, and then back at Oliver. "I will see you later." Ethan to Oliver without taking a hand off his phone. Lena felt her mouth go dry. The central problem sat in the open. Ethan was moving something he had once kept between them into another life. Lena's suspicion turned into a need for proof within the first 10 seconds. She rode the elevator down to the underground parking with her keys clenched in the palm of her hand. She herself, she would ask, calmly, when they were alone. The memory of the second pillow and the unopened envelope on their kitchen table, the quiet detail from 2 weeks ago, rose in her mind as a specific comparison. Then an empty fold of pillow, now a folded envelope exchanged with a co-worker. The earlier image made the new one feel like a confirmation rather than an accident. She found Maya at the cafe 2 blocks away 10 minutes later. Maya was already on her phone, sleeves pushed up, a ceramic cup in both hands. Lena sat down and said, "I just saw Ethan in the lobby. He handed something to Oliver and looked past me." She did not let the word, maybe, in. Suspicion gave way to worry as she explained the envelope and Oliver's surprised expression. Maya set her cup down and leaned forward. "Show me what you saw." Lena described the fitting details. The folded corner of the envelope, the way Ethan's shoulder angled away, the exact expression Oliver used. Maya's jaw tightened at the last detail. "Go home and check." Maya blunt and practical. "Don't sit on it or let it rot. Look for a boarding pass, look for travel plans." "See it now." Her voice left no space for second guessing. The tension shifted again from worry into a decided action. Lena left with a small knot in the front of her throat. On the street the air had a thin, clean chill that made her fingers ache. She walked faster than she meant to, replaying Ethan's expression so she could later test it against what she would find at home. The apartment door came into view with its small brass numbers. She set her keys on the lock and caught her reflection in the peephole. She smoothed the front of her blouse without thinking. Seeing Ethan give Oliver a folded paper had changed her Saturday, and the specific stakes, his possible transfer or absence, sat in her chest like a weight. Inside, the apartment smelled of lemon cleaner and the faint woody scent she associated with Ethan's shirts. Lena moved directly to Ethan's coat hung by the door. She unbuttoned pockets, checked lining, and then took the coat into the bedroom where the closet hung with carefully arranged shirts and suits. She closed the door behind her, breathing short and measured, and slid her hand into the suit pocket. Her fingers brushed thin paper. A boarding pass with a printed flight time and an itinerary printout folded small and tucked behind it. Her stomach tightened and the worry sharpened into fear. She read the flight details. A one-way ticket, an airline name she didn't usually hear, a departure date in 3 days. And under the itinerary a line from Ethan's manager mentioning a move and a phrase that cut colder than any weather, making a clean break. Lena held the paper against the light and watched the edges of the print tremble as her hands did. She thought of that second pillow and of the unopened envelope on the kitchen table from Chapter 1. The earlier moment of quiet had been a hint. This was a plan. Lena put the documents back where she had found them and closed the coat's button, as though the button could secure answers. She left the closet without making a sound and sat at the kitchen table. The apartment clock read 6:40 in the evening. She set the boarding pass on the table and waited for Ethan to come home, for the conversation she had postponed until, later, her hands folded over each other. Fingers finding the rim of a mug until the ceramic warmed them. She used the mug to force a slow rhythm into herself. Cup, breathe, set down, breathe. When Ethan came in, he set his messenger bag on the counter. He greeted her with the routine phrase, "Hey, Lena," but his eyes flicked past the board on the fridge, avoiding the space between them where a question now hung. Lena did not allow a long preface. She pushed the boarding pass across the table so the print faced him. "Ethan, what is this?" she asked, voice precise. Ethan's face went still. He reached for the paper and turned it over without meeting her eyes. "It's Oliver and I discussed something at the office," he said, voice low. "If I could take the transfer. It would be a good step for work." He folded the paper and set it back. It's not that we planned this together." Lena heard the hesitation and the measured distance in his words. She recognized how he had avoided conversation since the envelope in the lobby. They began to speak in smaller, clipped sentences, each exchange a measured step around a fragile truth. "Ethan, you handed an envelope to Oliver this morning in the lobby, Lena. Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan rubbed the bridge of his nose, a mannerism she knew meant he was trying to hold himself steady. "I didn't tell you because—" He paused. "I didn't want to make it harder." Work moved fast, Lena. The pacing of his answers changed her anger into something colder. Disappointment that he had chosen ease over honesty. The argument shifted quickly into a compact sequence of questions and evasions. "Ethan, did you plan this before?" Lena, keeping her sentences short. "When did you know?" Ethan's voice tightened. "A few weeks." They floated the idea. He stopped when she leaned forward, the gesture like a cut. "You kept it to yourself. You left the envelope on the table 2 weeks ago and didn't tell me anything." The conversation became a small battle. 3 lines of rapid exchange, then a pause. "Lena, Ethan, I found a boarding pass in your coat." He looked down at the table and then away. He tried to explain and his words came in fragments that showed his avoidance rather than courage. "It was complicated with Oliver. They offered higher responsibility. I didn't know how to bring it up without making it seem like I was leaving you out." Lena answered in a tone that mixed hurt and plain fact. "You left a boarding pass in a suit pocket, Ethan. You handed something to Oliver this morning. You packed part of a plan into an envelope and moved the rest into your phone. You can't call that not keeping me out." The room held a long, precise silence. Outside, a siren passed on the street. Inside, there was only the scrape of a chair leg. When Ethan stepped away to take a call, he said, "I'll be right back," and his phone lay face up on the coffee table. Lena had a choice. Wait or take the step Maya had urged. She picked up the phone and opened a message thread without thinking of privacy rules, only the need to understand. The thread showed a short exchange with his manager and a formal offer with a start date in the line. "We can help you make a clean break if that's what you want." Reading the phrase, Lena's worry became sharp and then raw anger. She swallowed and put the phone back down. The discovery altered the power of the room. Lena no longer had to ask whether Ethan planned to leave. She had a plan he had hidden, The revelation changed her approach from pleading to forcing a clear decision. She put the wedding band on the table and then she wrote a short, handwritten note, no flourishes, asking directly, "What are you choosing, Ethan? Stay or go?" She slid both the ring and the note across the table and looked at him while he spoke into the phone. They collided then in a confrontation that was more action than speech. Ethan came back and sat opposite her. His hands trembled slightly when he reached for the ring. "Lena," his name, and waited. "Ethan, don't avoid this. Tell me now." He put his palm over the ring, fingers flattening against the wood of the table, and said, "Lena, I love you. I do. This job, it's a chance. But I didn't want to burden you." Her response sharpened into something she had not planned. "Don't use burden to hide a choice. Tell me what you re-choosing." The room narrowed to the circle of the table and the items on it. They traded 3 rapid lines of conversation that made the stakes concrete. "Ethan, you chose not to tell me. I didn't want you to worry. Worry isn't a reason to decide for both of us." He opened his mouth and closed it. For a moment the only sounds were the refrigerator faintly humming and the pulse in Lena's wrist. Ethan then said something that functioned like a decision but left a gap in its delivery. "They want me to start in 2 weeks. I can ask for more time, but..." He stopped. Lena pushed the boarding pass back toward him. 2 weeks is not the same as later. The 2 weeks changes our plans." The tension peaked into a confrontation that did not resolve with a single sentence. Their exchange was a small climax. Words, a gesture, a choice that waited for the other to commit. Then the unexpected happened. Oliver texted Ethan from the office, and the content of the message altered Lena's understanding of why the envelope had been handed over in the lobby. The message referenced a client visit and an immediate start date. Ethan's face showed an internal calculation. Opportunity weighed against the disarray it would cause at home. The twist changed Lena's plan from asking to demanding clarity. She took a breath and said, "Ethan, if this means you relieving, tell me now so we can arrange things properly. Tell me so I can call Claire before I have to call her in the middle of the night." Claire's name landed like a tool, practical, useful, necessary. Ethan looked at the phone, then at the note, then at the ring. He went to the bedroom and packed a small bag without speaking. Each movement he made was literal and precise. Shirts folded, a toothbrush slid into a canvas case, a single pair of sneakers jammed in last. Packing became the answer that his words would not be. Lena called Claire with her voice steady. "Claire, I need help. Ethan's leaving. He will probably leave tonight." Claire, a few quick questions about where Lena could go and what she needed. The call finished with Claire saying, "I'll be there in 40 minutes, and Lena, thank you," in a way that was not sentimental, only efficient. At that moment, the apartment became a plan in motion rather than a question in stasis. Ethan left a short handwritten note on the counter instead of talking through the decision. He wrote, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier. I didn't know how to do this without hurting you. I'll be staying elsewhere for a while. We'll talk soon." He signed his name and folded the paper with the same care he used to fold shirts. Then he went to the door, slipped his bag over his shoulder, and paused as though deciding whether to turn back. In that pause, Lena spoke, not a demand but a fact. "Ethan, leave the envelope on the table if you leaving. Don't take something that matters to both of us." He hesitated, then put the envelope down. He did not touch the ring. He walked to the door, opened it, and stepped into the hallway. The corridor light washed his profile. Then he shut the door behind him. The door sound was a solid, final click that left Lena with very practical tasks. Call Claire back with details, gather essential documents, decide what to do with the shared accounts, and where she might sleep tonight. Her actions were measured and concrete. She filled a small box with the thin gold locket and the leather journal. She placed the locket into the box with a precise movement, not theatrics. The box was not symbolism. It was a container for an object she had worn every day and could now choose to store. When Claire arrived, she moved through the apartment with quick competence. "Lena, let me make tea and we'll sort out a bag for you. Claire." Claire's speech was brisk. Claire folded a sweater into a duffel while asking Lena specific questions about work, keys and bills. The focus shifted from inner reflection to logistics. Claire's presence changed the energy in the room, from private grief to a practical rearrangement. At 3 in the morning, when the city sounded quieter, Lena sat by the rain-speckled window and wrote a single line in her worn journal. "I will sort this tomorrow." She did not attempt to wrap the night's events in meaning. She recorded what she had done. Found a boarding pass, confronted Ethan, read messages, set out the ring, and watched him leave. The entry was short, factual, and a list of actions rather than feelings. The chapter closed with a final, deliberate beat. She placed her thin gold locket into the small box she had prepared and slid the boarding pass under it, a physical decision about what to carry forward. She did not write an epilogue about strength or reinvention. Instead, she called Claire and asked for one practical favor: that Claire come by in the morning to help move a few boxes. The ring remained on the table between an unanswered note and a folded boarding pass. Outside, the building's hallway light went off at last, and inside Lena sat with the immediate, resolvable tasks in front of her. She put the box into the closet for the night and closed the door. The last line of the chapter is not a declaration. It is a concrete scene. Ethan closed their apartment door behind him with a small bag in hand, and Lena held the boarding pass and the note at the table as the rain tapped the kitchen window. Emotion roots, suspicion, emotion shifts, suspicion, worry, fear, worry, anger, clarity, anger, resolve, quiet, acceptance. This chapter followed the beats laid out. The office lobby confrontation, confiding to Maya, the search and discovery at home, the strained dinner conversation, reading messages on the phone. The climax confrontation when Lena placed the ring and the note on the table, Ethan packing and leaving, and a quiet epilogue with the locket stored away. The events resolved the chapter's immediate conflict. Lena confronted the evidence, forced a decision, and the practical fallout began. The ending gives a clear situational pivot to the next chapter. Ethan has left for the night, documents are on the table, and Lena must decide how to rearrange the life they shared. Rain hit the stoop in hard silver lines the moment Lena reached the steps. Suspicion tightened under her ribs as she saw a navy duffel open on the curb, and Ethan bending to shove a shirt inside. She stepped forward and said, "Ethan, what are you doing?" His head rose, eyes avoiding hers. The confrontation began before she had time to breathe. Lena's suspicion had been growing for weeks. Every late night an unanswered question had stacked like unread mail. She had seen the second pillow untouched. She had found an unopened envelope on the kitchen table a few mornings earlier. She had watched Ethan press a folded paper into Oliver's hand in the elevator 2 chapters before, and that image had settled into her bones. Now those small facts demanded answers. The central problem was plain: Ethan was leaving, and he had not told her why. Ethan's hands froze over the duffel. He did not meet Lena's eyes. "Lena, I don't want to do this here," he said, voice low. "Ethan, then tell me now," Lena answered, stepping so the rain hit only the hem of her coat. "Don't put it in the car and pretend this is a quiet thing." He rubbed the bridge of his nose. He always had that motion when he was cornered. "I said I'll explain later," he replied. "I need space." Lena felt the instant shift from suspicion to irritation. She moved in front of the car and placed a palm flat on the hood. "You promised me later for weeks, Ethan. Now is later." "Tell me now." He sighed and looked at the street. "There's a job out of state. It's complicated. I'm taking it." The words landed like a stone. Lena's mouth opened. "A job. Ethan, then why are you packing like you were running? Why do I find envelopes on the table? Why did you slip something to Oliver in the elevator?" Her voice stayed even-clipped. She used short sentences to keep from breaking. Ethan's jaw tightened. "The envelope wasn't. I wasn't hiding anything like that. Oliver just helped with a thing at work." "Lena, please." The rain blurred Ethan's shoulders. Lena's emotion shifted again from irritation to a hot, sharp betrayal. She had not been prepared for silence and half answers. She stepped closer so the motion of her coat brushed his elbow. "Ethan, stop avoiding it. Say what you're redoing." He looked at her finally. "They offered me a move, Lena, an out-of-state role that starts in 6 weeks. It's the next step for my team. I thought I could figure out how to tell you. I thought I could handle the timing." He spoke quickly. "I didn't want to hurt you." Lena heard the attempt at protection and understood its shape. He had chosen not to hurt himself by confronting her with bad news. She felt anger toward that self-protective choice. "You didn't want to hurt you," she said. "You didn't want to tell me." "There's a difference, Ethan." He closed his mouth. Oliver arrived on the curb then, moving from the shadow of the parked cars as if he had been following a rehearsed step. He handed Ethan a folded envelope with one clean motion and did not look at Lena. The appearance of Oliver made Lena's suspicion spike into something crystalline. The earlier memory of the elevator scene flashed forward into a fact. Others were involved. Oliver did not stop. He touched Ethan's shoulder and stepped away. Ethan nodded, then turned back to Lena with a brief, helpless look. I asked Oliver to meet me for a hand-off. I didn't want you to see me on the phone at work, Lena. I didn't want to start a fight at midnight. He tried to sound apologetic. You started a fight by leaving parts of your life closed to me, Lena replied. You started it with the envelope on the table and the second pillow. You made decisions without me and then tried to hide them. Ethan's face lost color. I should have told you. I'm sorry. The rain kept drawing lines across the stoop. Lena made a quick decision and said, come inside. Now she stepped back and opened the building door, the metal cool and slick under her fingers. They moved into the narrow hallway. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee gone cold. A mug sat at the sink with a lipstick mark at its rim. Lena's hands were steady when she moved through the rooms. She went to the bedroom and opened the closet. She checked coat pockets with deliberate motions until she felt paper beneath fabric. She pulled out a folded itinerary printed on company letterhead and an unsigned resignation letter with Ethan's name printed but no signature. The physical evidence changed the tenor of suspicion into a harder certainty. This was planned. Lena held the itinerary against the living room lamp and read the details aloud. Plane leaves in 5 days. Start date in 3 weeks. Why didn't you sign this, Ethan? Her voice tightened. She spoke in short sentences to avoid the trembling in her hands. Ethan walked in slow, his shirt damp from rain. I couldn't sign it because I couldn't decide if I could ask you to go with me. I couldn't decide how to tell you I'd leave our life behind. I thought. He stopped and looked at the resignation. I thought I would find the right moment. Lena set the papers on the coffee table. The apartment's morning light was pale against the blinds. She wanted to argue that a right moment is made by conversation, not by calculated silence. Instead she asked, did you apply alone? Did you tell them you'd move without me? Ethan swallowed. They offered relocation. I said yes. I didn't tell them anything about you because I couldn't make that call for you. Lena's breathing sharpened. Doubt shifted into a brittle, controlled anger. She moved to the living room and sat on the arm of the couch, folding her hands so they would not shake. Ethan, she said, you made a decision that demands I decide too. You can't leave like this and expect me to stand still. He approached and tried to take the papers back. Lena, please, let me explain. Let me say why this is good for us. We'll plan it. No, Lena interrupted. Her voice was small and precise. Don't we me into something you chose without me. Tell me why you didn't say it. Tell me why you let me discover it this way. He looked at the floor. Then he said, in a voice barely above the room, I was afraid of the fight. I was afraid you'd resent me for leaving. I thought if I left quietly, it might hurt less. They spoke in short sentences after that, as if sharper language might break the room. Lena direct questions and Ethan answered in fragments. The exchange became a rhythm of accusation and explanation. At one point Lena snapped, Ethan, do you still love me? Say it plainly. He hesitated, then said, yes, I love you, Lena. I'm afraid of the messy conversation. 3 quick lines of back and forth followed, a compact argument that made the air feel small. You me later for months. Lena, you avoided me for months. I thought I was protecting us. Ethan replied, you protected yourself by choosing silence, Lena. That's not protection, I know, he answered. The conversation moved the stakes. Each short question and answer revealed that the rupture had less to do with another person and more to do with a pattern. Even avoiding hard choices, Lena left to name them. That realization shifted Lena's emotion from raw betrayal toward a focused grief. She was grieving the loss of the life they had been building together. Not necessarily for a person who had acted with malice. At that moment, Oliver's earlier arrival felt less like proof of an affair and more like evidence of coordination around a single decision. Lena found that twist surprising. She had expected deceit in other forms and now faced a different betrayal, the choice to plan alone. The new understanding reset the direction of her anger. Lena walked to the kitchen table and opened her worn leather journal. She wrote one line, then folded the page and slid it into a small envelope. Her hands were deliberate. She pulled Ethan's simple silver wedding band from the bowl by the door. It caught the kitchen light in a narrow flash. The room narrowed to the table and those two small objects, the ring and the folded page. She set the band on the table first, then the envelope. She did not speak right away. Ethan moved forward, reaching toward the ring. "Lena, don't," he said. She looked at his outstretched hand and then at his face. "Ethan, I won't beg you to stay. I won't ask you to choose because you are too afraid of the choice itself." Her voice was steady. She placed the envelope in front of him and did not step back. "This is how I explain myself. It's my decision to leave the rest to you." Ethan's fingers hovered above the ring. He tried to pick it up, but his hand trembled. "Lena, please. I can fix this. I can change the start date. I can." She felt the final emotion shift in that instant, from grief to resolve. "Ethan, you already chose. You chose silence over conversation. You chose to let me find documents in your coat. You chose to let other people handle the handoff. I'm not asking you to stay. I'm choosing not to be moved by your indecision." He reached for her arm. She pulled away gently but firmly. He tried again and failed to stop her when she turned toward the door. The movement was precise. Lena picked up her thin gold locket, slipped a coat on, and walked out. Ethan called her name, voice breaking. She walked down the hallway, opened the building door, and did not look back. Outside, the rain had slackened to a steady breath. Lena walked to the corner where a taxi idled and paid with even movements. She did not run. She moved as if carrying out a set of small tasks that announced the end of shared routines. On the ride, she looked at the itinerary in her bag and then closed her eyes. The pain of betrayal had become a set of decisions to make. Back in the apartment, Ethan sat on the couch and opened the unsigned resignation letter again. He took the pen and set it down beside the page as if preparing to sign, but he did not. Oliver called later that morning and left a short message. "Ethan, call me. We need to sort logistics." Ethan listened and then deleted the message. He did not press the pen to paper. Lena spent the morning completing small rituals that made the separation real. She emptied a box of extra mugs into a cabinet and labeled one Lena with a careful small sticker. She moved the worn journal into the top drawer of the kitchen table and placed a pencil beside it. She washed the coffee mug with the lipstick mark until the rim looked clean and ordinary. Each action translated emotion into a physical habit. By late morning, she met Maria at a quiet neighborhood cafe. Maria had been a steady friend in the background of their lives. She had appeared at birthdays and quiet dinners, and she knew the patterns in Lena's speech. Lena slid the spare key across the table. "Maria, I can't keep the apartment full of memories right now. Can you hold the key?" she asked. Maria took the key and did not smile. "Of course, Lena. I'll keep it. We'll make a list of what you want to move and what you want to leave. You don't have to decide everything today." Her voice was practical, warm in a way that did not demand performance. Lena felt a small shift from loneliness toward a practical calm. "I don't want to rush anything. I want a plan with room for grief." They spent the next hour listing tasks: change the mail, call the landlord, box sentimental items. The conversation kept to short lines and decisions. At one point, Maria, "Lena, do you want people to come by?" And Lena answered, "Not yet. I need a few solid mornings to set things straight." The exchange changed the emotional temperature. Practical help moved her toward action. Later that afternoon, Lena returned to the apartment with a small box. She moved through rooms methodically and packed the items she'd labeled. Each object she wrapped and placed into the box felt like a small, necessary cut. When she closed the box, she wrote, "Keep on one side and return on the other," then slid it under the bed. Ethan called before dusk. Lena let it ring, then answered with her name. "Lena, I'm sorry. I know I messed up. I don't want you to move out in anger. Please talk to me." His voice sounded exhausted. She listened to him for a moment before replying, "Ethan, you offered to explain earlier and didn't. I'm not going to be the one to make your fear a reason to keep you. If you want to talk, come by. Explain plainly. No plans, no promises. Just tell me what you intended to do and why." He agreed to come by in the morning. Lena hung up and turned the dial on the kitchen lamp until it cast a narrow pool of light on the journal. She opened it and wrote a short list. Documents to sort, people to call, a note to herself. Step 1. Breathe. Step 2. Tell Mariah where to start. Each line was concrete. The next morning, Ethan arrived with a small paper cup of coffee and a face that tried for contrition. He sat across from her at the kitchen table and began to speak. For the next 10 minutes they traded short sentences that clarified facts. The job offer was real, it required relocation, and he had told no one in Ha that he was married or that relocation would involve household decisions. He feared Lena's reaction, and that fear had frozen him. Lena listened, then asked a narrow question she had been waiting to ask. "Ethan, did you ever consider asking me to come?" He looked pained. "Yes. I thought about it. I thought about how to make it work. I couldn't figure it out without a fight." She watched his hands. He kept rubbing the bridge of his nose. They traded 3 to 6 quick lines of argument after that, compressed and direct. "You kept it private, Lena?" "Yes," Ethan answered. "You left me to find out," she replied. "I panicked," he said. "That doesn't make it right," she said. He nodded. At the end of the talk, Lena made a quiet, irrevocable choice. She slid a folded note across the table with her handwriting steady. The note read, "I will not be moved by your indecision. Decide what you need to do." "I will decide what I need to do." She pushed it toward him and then set the wedding band beside it. Ethan picked up the ring, turning it in his fingers, then set it down again. Neither of them spoke for a long measured beat. "Lena, you have 5 days to tell them what you will do. I will use the week to arrange things I need to. If you sign anything without me, I will treat that as a decision to end what we had." Her sentences were short and precise. She kept to actions and dates. He swallowed and said, "I understand." He reached for her hand, and she did not withdraw, but she did not take his fingers either. The physical contact was small, a finger on a knuckle, and it contained a goodbye and a question at once. Ethan left that afternoon with the resignation letter unsigned in his bag. Lena watched him go from the doorway. Her impulse was not to call him back. It was to list the next practical moves: return keys, pack boxes to a friend's storage, move important documents. Action translated mourning into motion. Over the next 2 days, unexpected small moments arrived that changed her understanding of what had happened. Oliver texted to ask if she wanted his help moving a box. Maria dropped off a bag of linens and stayed to measure the couch for gallery padding. Each person who had appeared at edges stepped forward in distinct ways. The presence of Oliver, once a strange indicator, became a practical connective tissue. He had helped Ethan manage logistics rather than hiding romantic deceit. A mid-chapter surprise occurred when Lena opened a drawer and found an old ticket stub from their first trip, folded and tucked beneath a receipt. That small object made her feel the length and continuity of what they had been. It surprised her out of the steady rhythm of tasks and reminded her that decisions had weight beyond the immediate. She held the stub and placed it into her journal. That evening, Lena boxed the remaining items and set them by the front door. She wrote a small note and slid it under Ethan's door. "I left the ring on the table. If you want to talk, come by tomorrow at 10. Otherwise, leave the resignation letter unsigned." She did not expect an immediate answer. She performed the set action to give both of them room to choose. On the final morning of the week, Ethan came in with the resignation letter in his hand and a pen. He placed the letter on the table and pushed it toward her. "I can sign it," he said, "or I can ask them to delay. I don't know which is right. I only know I can't keep stepping away from you like this." His voice had the wariness of someone who had pivoted from avoidance to facing consequences. Lena took the letter and the pen. She sat for a moment, then wrote one line across the top. "Talk to me before you decide anything binding." She handed the pen back. "If you sign it now, Ethan, I will accept that as your decision. If you leave it unsigned, then we will set a date to talk and mean it." She used facts and a timetable, refusing rhetoric. He nodded. He left the paper unsigned and walked to the window. He did not promise her anything dramatic. I'll arrange the meeting with her to ask about timelines. I'll tell Oliver to hold off on anything. I'll call you tomorrow at 10. The sentences were plain and concrete. They were the first clear steps Ethan had taken in months. Lena felt the final emotional settling of the chapter. Hurt and grief remained, but they now rest in a structure of decisions rather than on a shapeless fear. She held her journal in her lap and wrote a brief note. Tell the truth. Make decisions in daylight. Do not hide life from each other. The act of writing was small and deliberate. She packed one last box for storage and left it by the door. Maria came by and took the spare key she had been keeping. Ethan called at 10 the next morning and spoke plainly. They agreed on 2 conversations with clear agendas. One about logistics, one about whether the partnership could survive relocation. Both conversations would occur with honest questions and straightforward answers. When Lena closed the drawer with the journal inside, she felt no theatrical uplift. She felt a narrowing to necessary steps. Return calls, meet with the landlord, decide which pieces would go to storage. The chapter concluded on a concrete action. The apartment key slid into Maria's palm. Lena put the box into the taxi. And the last thing Lena did before the taxi door closed was leave the small gold locket on the kitchen table, face up. The last line of the morning was not an epiphany. It was a single, visible decision. Lena stepped out onto the wet sidewalk, the city moving around her, and closed the taxi door behind her. The light on the kitchen table stayed on for a while after the front door latched, a small rectangular glow on the wood where the ring had been. That glow marked the end of a chapter with a clear, practical beat. Decisions left on a table and 2 people tasked to act on them.